All right, let's dive into one of the most critical moments in American history. We're talking about a single decision by a legendary general that pretty much sealed the fate of a nation, all at the Battle of Gettysburg. Just look at this number, 51,000. That's the estimated number of casualties. We're talking killed, wounded, or missing soldiers from both sides, all in the span of just 3 brutal days. The scale of this thing was just immense. I mean, Gettysburg wasn't just another battle on the map. It was the turning point of the Civil War. It was the absolute high watermark for the Confederacy. And that brings us to the big question, right? How could General Robert E. Lee, a guy famous for his military genius, make such a catastrophic mistake? Well, to get the mistake, you first have to get the man. See, it all starts with where Lee's head was at leading up to this battle. He wasn't just feeling good about his chances, he was supremely confident. And why wouldn't he be? That confidence was built on a whole year of what felt like unstoppable success. I mean, his confidence was earned. Just look at this streak of incredible victories. Time after time, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, often outnumbered by the way, had outsmarted and absolutely crushed their Union opponents. By the time he marched his army into Pennsylvania, they seemed invincible. And that run of victories led to something historians now call the Chancellorsville Syndrome. After that amazing win just 2 months before Gettysburg, Lee basically built this powerful mental map. He started to believe his men could do literally anything, and that the Union Army would just break. That one assumption, built on all that past success, would turn out to be completely disastrous. Okay, so this mindset, this syndrome, directly shaped Lee's decisions on the absolutely critical night of July 2nd, after 2 days of hellish fighting. And the contrast between him and the guy on the other side, well, it couldn't be more clear. So on the Confederate side, you've got General Lee. He's looking at the day's bloody stalemate, not as a sign that the Union was strong, but as a failure of his own generals to get the job done. So does he call a meeting? Nope. Does he go look for new information? No. He just stays at his headquarters, inside what one historian calls a bubble, totally convinced that just one more big push would win the whole thing. Now, on the other side, the Union commander, General George Meade, does the exact opposite. He'd been all over the battlefield himself, seeing things firsthand. That night, he pulls all his top commanders together for a council of war. He talks to his intelligence chief, and then he asks his team 3 simple questions. Do we stay? Do we attack? Or do we wait? And their answer was completely unanimous. Stay and fight. So you see the difference here, right? It's just a night and day contrast in leadership. On one side, you have a commander going purely on gut instinct, totally isolated from what's really happening. And on the other, you have a leader who's gathering data, listening to his people, and building a consensus. And Lee's refusal to listen is perfectly captured in this chilling warning from his most trusted general, James Longstreet. On the morning of that 3rd day, Longstreet looks at the Union position on Cemetery Ridge and knows. He just knows it's a suicide mission. But Lee wouldn't hear it. His mind was already made up. And just like that, the stage was set for one of the most famous and infamous military attacks in all of history. The infantry assault that we now know as Pickett's Charge. You know, on paper, Lee's plan looked kind of brilliant. It was intricate, almost elegant. First, a diversionary attack over here, then a gigantic artillery bombardment to soften up the target, and finally a massive infantry charge right at what he thought was a weak spot in the Union center. It was a complex plan, sure, but one where every single piece had to work perfectly. But here's the thing. The whole plan was built on that one fatal assumption from his Chancellorsville Syndrome, the idea that the Union soldiers would just break and run. And right from the start, nothing went according to plan. The diversion fizzled out, and the artillery barrage, it completely failed to knock out the Union guns. And yet, the order was given. 12,500 Confederate soldiers stepped out from the cover of the trees to start a nearly mile-long charge across wide-open ground staring straight into the teeth of the Union line. In less than an hour, the whole thing was a complete and utter catastrophe. The force that made that charge suffered a staggering 60% casualty rate. 60%. Just let that sink in. Let's put a number on it. That's 7,500 men killed, wounded, or missing in a single assault. An entire generation of young soldiers from places like Virginia and North Carolina was practically erased in less than 60 minutes. The devastation was absolute. When General Lee told General George Pickett to rally what was left of his division, Pickett could only say, "General, I have no division." It was simply gone. So, why did this happen? What's the timeless lesson buried in the fields of Gettysburg? Well, it really comes down to a fundamental failure in thinking, even by a man we consider a military genius. You could say Lee fell into a few cognitive traps. His judgment was clouded by his absolute faith in his men and his low opinion of the enemy. He failed to adapt, ignoring all the new information telling him this battle was different. And maybe most critically, he just lacked the self-awareness to stop and ask one crucial question: hey, might I be wrong about this? An ideal leader, what you might call a battle-wise decision maker, knows how to blend their gut feeling, their intuition from experience, with hard reason based on new information. On that day, Lee was all intuition. Meade, on the other hand, was using both. And that's the real lesson here. Lee's mistake teaches us something incredibly powerful. The very strengths that make you successful, your confidence, your experience, they can harden into dogma, and they can blind you to a new reality that's staring you right in the face. Which leaves us with a really important question for any leader, in any field, at any time. When does your greatest strength, your own expertise, become your biggest liability?